White Noise Metal
with that BS dude, Brian Shields.
Welcome to White Noise Metal. I'm that BS dude, Brian Shields. We're here in North Carolina with Cynic. And as I was just saying, I saw you guys a couple weeks ago in San Francisco, was completely blown away by your approach, by the music, by the lyrics, by, when was the last time you went to a metal show and you saw the crowd doing yoga moves between songs? It's really great stuff. I bought the record and I've been listening to it pretty much nonstop ever since. So I really wanted to welcome you to White Noise Metal.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So can you talk to me a little bit to begin with about kind of your approach when you do songwriting? What's the process like?
I'm kind of a folky. I generally, all the songs start on acoustic guitar and with a strong chord changes and good melody, and that's the foundation of Traced in Air, really, was the first wave of demos for the album were literally guitar or piano vocal demos, and then from there it turned into the other layers, counterparts, rhythmic ideas, kind of production. There was actually 4 demos total for the album that we did in terms of how we layered and created the record. But yeah, at the root of it, I'm really just interested in a great song, and it's always about subtraction to kind of get to that. It's the core of a really almost like an effective poem. You just want to say as much as you can with as little as possible. And it's tricky to do that in the world of progressive music because it tends to do the opposite, where you're more indulgent. But we've always kind of do it in a more kind of concentrated way versus the other extreme, which is extended, and it's more about trying to keep it simple, really, but engaging in what we do naturally as musicians stylistically.
And so it starts with you on the acoustic guitar, and then you bring the rest of the band in?
Yeah, well, it's usually I just do a bunch of demos at home, and I give those demos to my drummer to start usually, and he comes over and he learns the arrangements, and then we flush out the rhythmic grooves, like, oh, let's push this section, let's try this, odd meter, let's maybe swing this section, let's try and do a different feel here. And so he plays a big part in that, because he's really just a rhythm guy. He's a drummer's drummer, and so he gets into kind of almost turning it inside out on a rhythmic level, and I play with that, and we find a balance where it still keeps the integrity of the melody, and kind of the feeling intact, but at the same time making it more interesting and dynamic. And then from there, I'll introduce it to the other musicians, and we'll get into counter guitar parts, layering ideas and kind of the grooves, just the real specific kind of micro groove level of the songs beyond just this. But to me, again, it's like that once that foundation is laid, you're golden. You can kind of go anywhere and do no wrong. And so it's usually, as long as I've got a really solid melody and a solid harmony, good chord structure, I feel like we're cool, we can kind of do whatever we want, and it's fun at that point,
There's a real jazz sense, both in terms of the drumming and in terms of the bass playing, I think. How improvisational is what you do?
I think there's the improvisational aspects come once the foundation's been laid, when we start playing it, and really feeling it in a room. And then we ride on the moment and try and kind of see what kind of arises as a result of kind of playing out the arrangement. And then you tend to stumble upon things which can tend to be really great accidents. And then it's like, no, let's do this. And so there's a lot of that spontaneous aspect but once the stuff's written, it's very kind of through written, like orchestrated, and even the solos, we try and keep everything pretty, but they start out as improvisations, and then it's like, well, let's flesh this out, let's figure out what this is exactly and fine tune it. So it's definitely a combination of trusting in the improvisational aspect, but at the same time trying to kind of refine it and be really specific about the language. otherwise. But we have thought about that, and when we do live shows, we tend to explore and do things where we improvise and stuff to have the jazzier side, which is a whole other game, you know.
Well, I was again blown away by the performance aspect of what you guys did in San Francisco. I thought it was really compelling and really drew me in. I want to talk a little bit about some specific songs.
Yeah.
Let's start with Space for This.
Okay. In terms of lyrically, or
lyrically, and in terms of what the approach and what the intent was.
well, the lyrics were birthed out of. I'm a big fan of a spiritual teacher named Eckhart Tolle. And I met him a few times, and I had seen a lecture of his in L.A. where I live, at an auditorium at UCLA, and that's where the song came from. It was really after I left that kind of, I guess you could say it was just an informal talk. I had already the tune in my head. It was just there in terms of lyrically. And then musically, it's a song that was kind of a real slow folk song, actually, that was very pensive and kind of quiet. And but I knew it had the potential to kind of make sense if you drove it. You know, if you kind of pushed it, it kind of could rock too. And so we went there with it. We kind of explored pushing it. And but it was, so where was that in terms of the record? I think it was one of the later tunes that I felt like was a song that kind of did everything. It's like a great, you know, it's really the second song on the record, but the first official song versus the intro tune. And it kind of feels like it's a classic Cynic song in the old sense too, in that it kind of covers a lot of territory, but it does it all in kind of disguising ways where we have a motif, but we're doing it where when we return to the motif, it's not as obvious to the ear until you keep listening, and then it's like, oh, I recognize that section. And so we play a lot with those ideas conceptually in terms of kind of repeating things, but trying not to be really blatant about it, you know, so it's disguised and feels like the song's evolving, you know. But yeah, it's kind of curious, and it does have that one drum kind of solo-y part that was straight out of an improvised moment where I started playing a D pedal and improvising these changes on top of it, and Sean just started doing his thing, and I was like, ooh, this works as a bridge kind of idea. And so that had a real true thing that became, and Sean I think still doesn't really play what he played on the record live. He always just is free about that, which is cool too.
But it is really kind of impressive how it goes from this acoustical folk song thing into what's frankly, it's a metal song. It's a rock and roll metal song, and it's very powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like we're our roots are, as kids we were prog rockers and we got into metal and everything, but we definitely have this inherent, like, it's in our biology to kind of make things. So, and I just feel like, essentially, and I've learned this as a songwriter for so many years, that writing folk songs, that when you got a good tune, you can do anything you want with it. Stylistically, you can go anywhere. It can go country, it can go metal, it can go, and it's really a question of how you want to approach it, production-wise and style, So for us, doing this prog metal-y thing, it's just kind of natural, It's kind of, let's push it and do this. But what's curious, and you'll probably get a kick out of, is we have an EP coming out where we do traced in air, and it's more the roots of the song. Kind of gone more sci-fi prog. It's kind of futuristic-y, but very much the roots, especially the beginning of the song, of almost like the demo. It's kind of coming home, which is cool.
I'm coming to you because I think Between the Buried and Me is the greatest band in the whole world. I'm just, I'm really obsessed about those guys. And I came to see you guys because of that. And I think that, in a way, bands like Between the Buried and Me and bands like what you're trying to do here, or what you are doing here, really forces the listener to do away with a lot of misconceptions and a lot of prejudices that they have coming in.
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of it's almost like a palate cleansing. You have to just let go, and it requires your attention. It requires energy. It's not background music.
Foreground music. Exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, so it's a different kind of aesthetic in terms of what it attracts audience-wise, but I think it really, and it's probably a smaller percentage of the general public, but the rewards are much greater when you give yourself the time to appreciate this kind of music, because it bears so many gifts if you just surrender to it, and really give it some energy, give it some time.
I want to talk briefly with you as well about Evolutionary Sleeper. What was the approach on that?
That was the first song written, actually, for the record. We had done that when we reunited, before even making Traced in Air. It was kind of like our re-entry into the scene song. And it's a song, I guess it's funny, it definitely was a folky little ditty and its roots, but what's curious is when that kind of busier riff transpired, which was kind of almost a Cynic-y kind of metal-y rock thing, Sean approached it with this almost samba kind of Latin groove, and the whole thing just shifted, and it was like, whoa, okay, here's the vibe of this tune now, and it took on this different space. But I like that juxtaposition that the song has of this almost kind of fierce presence, but also this intense emotional kind of energy. It's like very driving and complex, especially the verses and stuff. But then it's heart-wrenching too. It's got this like very kind of the heart melody. To me, it's heart-centered. And the song is definitely, in terms of the lyrical aspect, it's basically about learning how to let go of life as we know it and letting it be what it is. Just kind of showing up and not imposing our own agenda on our experience, and just letting life do what it needs to do. And it's not necessarily a passive approach. It's just being open to what's arising versus thinking we have control over it.
It's like people who obsess about the meaning of life, and the meaning is the life. The meaning is the living of it. It's not the words that we associate.
Exactly. With it. Yeah, life is happening regardless. Our bodies don't need us to breathe. It'll just keep breathing, right? So it's one of those things. Life is just going to keep doing what it's doing. The question is, do we want to coexist with it and be part of this thing that's happening all as one thing, essentially, instead of, yeah, it's interesting how the separation takes place and we get into our stories and we think life's over there or next week or that job or that, it's amazing. We torture ourselves when you really, it's thinking that somehow the past or the future has the answer. It's a dilemma of us humans, dilemma of the mind.
I want to talk also real briefly about Adam's Murmur.
Yeah, it's almost, to me, it's funny, I still see it, and I have a friend's daughter who I was saying, we're going to make a video for this eventually, and she's going to be the star of it, because it has this childlike thing to it with, feet to hip, navel to breast, it's just this, it's like your body, you're connecting with your body, and the way it's sung, where it's just this pedal, it's very childlike to me. It has an innocence. And the song definitely explores that. It gets into just connecting with the body, and it's really inspired by an author. There's two people. One of them is Carolyn Mace. She wrote a book called Anatomy of the Spirit, and numerous books since. She's insanely prolific, and she kind of gets into the links between the body and the whole universe and the external experience, and how they're all interconnected, how everything's essentially interconnected. And so the song kind of gets into that, where it's like, our bodies are essentially a micro of the macro, and kind of innocently exploring those kind of chakras or power points, and how we're, I guess the first verse is, from my great arteries to every blade of grass, a universal path, so it's inner to outer to the whole thing. So, and that's really the whole core of the tune.
It's that union, that yoga that you talk about between our perceptions and what's actually out there.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about spirituality and the spiritual path, and how that relates to what you're accomplishing musically.
I think it's pretty much the whole deal for me. And I learned that years ago. I had a teacher that kind of encouraged me to go deeper down the path, and it was naturally, innately inclined, but what was curious was, I guess, like getting turned on to people like John McLaughlin, who were kind of marrying these worlds, and I got really into Mahavishnu Orchestra, and I was like, wow, it doesn't have to be separate. I don't have to be this rock and roll musician and the dude that meditates. They can kind of merge, and they can coexist, and they always have, and I didn't realize it. And so, to me, it's all one thing. It really is. It's kind of an extension of who I am in terms of what this band is about and why we're doing this. And I feel it's the duty of the artist to some degree to push the envelope and to kind of give back, to kind of maybe put up the mirror and just say, who are we, or what's happening here, and do it in a way that's loving and compassionate versus hitting you over the head. It's gentle. It's not trying too hard. It's more just sharing, and I just find the more I discover or kind of uncover or whatever you want to call it, the easier it becomes for me to kind of do what I do. It's all kind of, oh, yeah, this is natural. This is there's no work to do. It's just the doing. This is non-doing. You just show up and it just happens. And so
which isn't to say that there's not effort involved, because obviously there is.
Yeah, well, the effort is our presence, right? Is our ability to stay here with what's happening versus being pulled away. And but when you're in that flow, it doesn't feel exhausting. It just, it's almost the opposite. It's invigorating. And that to me is what music is about. That to me is the whole craft of doing this. And I don't know, I'm grateful to be a musician, really. I feel lucky, that I found this early on, and it made a lot of sense to me in terms of something that just resonated on multiple levels, and that my parents were cool enough to push me and say, okay, if you really want to do this, we'll get you lessons, and you better get to work and practice. And I was like, loving it, I was like, okay, So it made a difference for me in terms of having that sense of, like, I wasn't fighting a system. I wasn't trying to prove a point or go against anyone. I certainly had my dark moments and periods, but they were more my own stuff versus what was going on out there, But it took a while to realize that, to stop blaming everybody else,
Well, I certainly feel lucky to have discovered Cynic. And it's been a wonderful experience this last few weeks listening to it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again tonight.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add I didn't ask you about?
Oh, well, thanks for this talk, and thanks for being here. And it's kind of a special night. It's the last night of the tour, and we've had an amazing run. This has probably been one of our best tours we've been on. Just the chemistry between the groups has been so effortless and so easy that I don't take this kind of thing for granted. I say, wow, how cool. It's really encouraging for all of us. Everyone, I think, is feeling the same way, which is nice.
Excellent. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
If you like this band, you should buy their music and other merchandise at whitenoisemetal.com. If you like White Noise Metal, say so with positive comments on iTunes and MySpace. And please tell your friends about the bands you've heard on White Noise Metal with that BS dude, Brian Shields.
White Noise!